I can tell you that we're going to make sure we introduce contact in a very careful way, and we're not even close to that right now. We need to make sure that Sid is able to recondition fully without any return of these symptoms. We're going to measure him with impact and with our testing every step of the way, and we're going to make sure that we do this in a systematic, careful way. And when when he's ready, we'll know. And I think the prognosis, I agree with Dr. Carrick, the prognosis, first of all, is excellent that Sid will not have any long-term problems from this injury. In fact, I'm supremely confident in that issue. The return to play issue, I'm also equally positive. I think we'll get there. But we're not there yet, and we have work to do before we get there.
This is for Dr. Collins and for Sid to follow up on it. First of all, am I saying it right? Is it vestibular? Is
Yes.
that vestibular? If his vestibular perception is that of a Ferrari, can he regain that 100%? And I guess, Sid, from your point of view, if your perception in that regard is so high, is it hard for you to diagnose when you're getting close to 100% because your 100% might be a little, I mean, your 90% might be somebody else's 100% based on some of the things that Dr. Collins was saying?
First of all, I don't think you could have said it more eloquently. Sid's 100% is different than anyone else's. And that has been a challenge with this case because he is the Ferrari of hockey players. And, we have made tremendous progress with this. At this point, Sid is not having any classic vestibular symptoms remaining. All this fogginess, the fatigue, the dizziness, the space and motion issues at this point in time at 70–80% of reconditioning have gone away, which is very positive. It is a challenge because this is not like your usual case. And I see these injuries all day, every day, and I see high school kids that have these problems, and their 100% is maybe perhaps a little different than Sid's. And so that has been a challenge, but I think we're going to be very attuned to that as we move forward.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, I think 90% is good, but at the same time, if there's symptoms or if there's things that aren't right, 90% really isn't good enough. I'm probably putting myself in a position to get hit and probably mess that system up a little bit more. That I don't want to do that. So maybe I could get by with 90%, maybe I couldn't, but I'm not going to roll the dice on that. I think it's important to get back to where I need to be, and if not, we've seen it many times. You'll get reoccurring issues, and I definitely want to stay away from that. So
we know that outcomes are. I'm sorry, Sid. Yeah. We know that outcomes are much better when we achieve that 100%. So we're not going to allow Sid to go back at 90%.
Sid, and this goes for Sid and Dr. Collins. Sid, you amped it up pretty good when you tried to come back during the playoffs. You were skating around pretty well. Maybe can you describe the difference between then and now? And Dr. Collins, if you could follow up on that a little bit, why you thought then that you could do what you did and why you had to back off and how you feel now compared to then?
Yeah, I guess it was kind of similar to the summer. As soon as I started to really push myself, and a practice is much different than a game, and I wasn't getting hit. I was skating pretty good, but we're talking about split seconds in hockey, and I think people have to realize that too, is that you can look good on the outside. You're not limping with a concussion. It's not visible, but as far as timing and things like that, things feeling faster, that's all part of those symptoms, and a lot of those things started to creep back, and the fogginess that Mickey talked about, the headaches, that kind of thing. As soon as I started to increase exertion and intensity, all those things seemed to creep back a little bit. So it's not easy to kind of go through that. There's no guideline. You've got to listen to your body. You've got to listen to the doctors, and luckily for me, I've got a great team of people here that have really helped me. But at the same time, at the end of the day, I know how I feel, and I've got to make sure that I let them know that.
And to answer your question, Sid's been, he's been an incredible patient. He's compliant with everything. He's worked so hard to get better from this. The amount of time he's done with rehabilitation, the amount of hours we spent together, the amount of phone calls we made. I couldn't have a better patient with this, and that's going to help with this outcome. because, you know, I think we have a very good dialogue between us. And yeah, I mean, he went back, and when he got to 89%, the symptoms started coming back. So we backed off. It's as simple as that.
That's a question for Sidney Crosby. It's Paul Hunter from CBC National News. Despite all the positives that we're hearing here, I've yet to hear an absolute, and I recognize that that's part of the problem with these kinds of injuries. But I wonder if, given that, you're willing to say what so many people are thinking because of the stakes involved here and the importance of this kind of injury, which is that there remains a possibility that you will never play in the NHL again.
Mm-hmm. Pretty slight one. I wouldn't bet on that. But I think that, yeah, it's a scary thing, and I think it's, you know, we've got to be aware of it. I think even for myself, I've been much more educated over the last 6-7 months here with how serious these are, and I think we continue to educate ourselves, but we can have as much education as we want. If concussions are as, you know, prominent as they are now, it doesn't matter how much you know about them, they're going to be a problem. So I think, you know, we've got to make steps to help avoid them and not deal with this. But as far as my situation, I'm lucky. I mean, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape and on the right end of this right now.
But are you preparing for that possibility in your head?
Not whatsoever. Not at all.
Sid, can you kind of, this is a two-part question, but I'm not sure that a lot of us understand what 90% of intensity or 89% intensity for you is. Is that lugging 3 people up Citadel Hill, or what do you have to do to reach that? And given that, and you said practice is different from games, so what's your status for maybe skating with the team in non-contact situations in a training camp?
Yeah, I mean, 80-90% is, and I think I've discussed it with the doctors, you know, with Ray, with everyone. It's, and we talk about that extra gear in hockey. I mean, it's one thing to be out there skating and, you know, to be kind of be cruising around, but it's another thing to really exert yourself fully and to have to turn quick and stop and all these things that we take for granted so much doing every day, but are pretty taxing on your whole system. So I would say when I say 80-90%, when I really fatigue myself or really, you know, stress those things, I didn't really respond the right way. But and then the second part, what was the second part to your question?
With that live situation.
Well, I think as far as Dr. Collins and, you know, communication with the team, I think that's something that we'll see moving forward. You know, I'm not sure how things are going to go, but I would expect at some point, yeah, we're going to have to introduce contact and that kind of thing. But you know, that's something that we've always kind of worked and communicated closely to figure out what those guidelines are.
Sidney, can you describe, we talked about fogginess, can you describe in your words what it was like maybe at the worst part, and when you had the recurrence of the symptoms, what was that like mentally for you to realize that you weren't there yet? You describe that process and really sort of in lay terms what your life was like, what you could and couldn't do, that sort of thing.
Yeah, as far as the worst part, I would say that just probably right away. You know, I didn't really like driving, just driving or watching TV. You know, even having the radio on in the car, I didn't want to listen to the radio. I tried to go to a meeting actually with our team like a month in, and just watching video was, you know, was something that really felt like it was stressing my system. I had to work so hard just to concentrate on that. Those were kind of the worst parts. I had, you know, a couple bad migraines and stuff like that, stuff I hadn't really experienced before. So I guess that was the toughest part. And then when things reoccur, yeah, obviously it's frustrating because you feel like you're making progress, and that's the nature of these things. Sometimes, you know, you have a few good days and a few bad days, and it's impossible to predict those kind of things. All you can do is kind of put yourself in the right situation to heal and do the right things, but there's still no guarantee sometimes. So, you know, I know that there was always a want or a need for information on what was going on with me, and I understand that, but I'd be telling you a different story every 2 days, and you know, it's not as easy and not quite as simple as just saying there's a date and I feel better, and you know, it's a difficult thing to go through. And trust me, I'd love to have answers myself sometimes when I was going through that, but it's not as easy as that.
Yeah, Sid, you're familiar with the NHL landscape and how many players have struggled to come back for long periods of time. And Dr. Collins pointed out that initially, just by your symptoms, he thought it was going to be a long haul. But, knowing what you did at that point about concussions, and even after Dr. Collins told you that, were you mentally prepared for the fact it was going to take this long? And if so, or if not, what was your level of frustration when you started to, continue to have symptoms?
I think it's like anything. You can always prepare yourself and, think you're ready. But, when you go through it, yeah, there's obviously times of frustration. And, these are things that seem to come so easy, things that we do every day that's not as easy as we think it is sometimes when you're going through this. So I would say, yeah, there were different points where I was definitely frustrated. And as positive as you try to be, it definitely takes a toll, and it's mentally draining as it is to go through this. So it's a roller coaster, and the only thing is when you talk to guys who've gone through this, it's nice because you can, you know that they can relate and they understand. And as much as we can sit here and talk about what it's like, it's hard to really understand unless you've gone through it. So I think that's why the importance of educating people and just making sure that you can't maybe understand what it's like, but you can prepare for it and make sure you do that part. So, I think there's strides and the education's gotten better, but I think we can still do more.
Dr. Collins, I have 3 questions. One, did the fact Sid took 2 hits in quick succession make this worse? 2, what specifically are the steps from here in terms of return to play protocol? And 3, are there any way he could complete those steps by October 6th?
Regarding your first question, as I talked about, this is an extraordinarily difficult injury to assess, and the types of symptoms Sid had, although they're the most deleterious and harmful and predict the worst outcome in terms of length of recovery, they're also the hardest to articulate. Do I feel that first injury, it certainly didn't help the situation. And what I see in clinic every day is exactly what happened to Sid Crosby. You have repetitive injury without even being aware there was something going on in the first place, and there being no outward signs of being difficulties going on. This is an invisible injury a lot of times. And it's not like, it's just a very complicated, convoluted, cryptic thing to go through. But it took a perfect storm to get in the situation. The types of symptoms Sid had, the biomechanics of the hit, repetitive injury, it just took a perfect storm to get in the situation. But we're doing well. We're moving forward. Is he going to be ready by October 6th? I have no earthly idea. I mean, there's a process here that we have to go through, and I'm not putting any timelines on it. Sid's not putting it. The Penguins certainly aren't putting any time. The Penguins have been. I work with a lot of different organizations with a lot of different athletes that have concussions, and I've never seen a group of individuals more committed to making sure this is done right. And so it will be done right, and there's no timelines on it. Well, what is the process? The process is getting Sid reconditioned, making sure at that 80, 90, 95, 99, 100% level of conditioning that Sid doesn't have a flare-up of symptoms. It's measuring this with impact over time and making sure we're not seeing any decrements in functioning. Then it's introducing light contact and moderate contact, and then in measuring and assessing the whole way and making sure that the cows are back in the barn.
Does he have to do things for a certain amount of time?
We'll know as we go. It's a fluid process.
Sidney, Dr. Carrick just talked about headshots being an epidemic right now, and recently Hockey Canada just instituted the zero tolerance policy for all headshots in minor hockey. Can I get your thoughts on that, and do you think maybe the NHL needs to do more as we keep talking about concussions all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally in agreement with that. I think that's very important, obviously, at grassroots, and this is what kids are going to know. That's all they're going to know when they start playing hockey now. So I think as a league, as a union, I think we've all educated ourselves a lot over the last 6-7 months and really looked at this. And like I said earlier, I think we can go further. I think